What's going on, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Expected Bets for Franco. We're here at the Ottawa Senators. We keep chugging along on these shows. Almost done with the Atlantic, but this team should be interesting. How we doing?
I'm doing good. Are the Sens finally a team we can trust? I feel like the last couple seasons we've been like, all right, here we go, guys. And then they just disappoint and disappoint. Is this the year? What do we think,
We'll
guys?
figure it out. We'll figure it out shortly. Betsky, I like the shirt, repping the Sens here, getting the good vibes going.
We are. And in fact, I actually got this shirt because I thought this team was going to be so much fun to watch. I think last season or the year before that, and guess I jumped the shark on that one. But I don't know.
Your second time wearing it since you got it. You're just like, all right, some hope now with this team. Let's finally. Where did I put this shirt?
Exactly.
All right, let's get into the team breakdown of the Ottawa Senators. The Senators make a few off-season additions, headlined by Linus Ullmark. Franco, they desperately needed some help in goal here, and they got it. They take one of the key pieces away from their division rival. Ullmark should help this squad improve here, but what are your thoughts on their off-season moves?
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing that they've needed over the course of these last couple of years. They tried Talbot. They brought in Korpisalo last year thinking that was going to be the guy that was going to solve it, and he just never looked really good last year and dealt with injuries as well as he has historically. So Ullmark has been really, really good for the Bruins the last few years. And is that a product of the Bruins system, or is it that he's truly good? Because I know you're a Sabres fan, and he was a former Sabre, and he never quite did what he did in Buffalo as he did in Boston. So
he's got an Atlantic Division addiction, I guess.
Yeah, he's just gonna stay.
He refuses to leave it. Yeah,
he'll be on Toronto in a couple of years from now. But yeah, I mean that would be my biggest concern about it, right? Like this is the move that matters. They've added other pieces, but this is the one that is really going to decide whether this team is going to get over that hump or not. And I have a little bit of worry just because, like I said, we don't know if Ullmark is for real or not. If he's going to revert to the guy we saw back in Buffalo, then we're going to be back to the same old Sens. And I'm choosing to be a little bit more positive, though. I think that this move is good for them. It comes at the right point in his career where maybe he has found it. And again, these lines all look pretty damn good. The forward group looks good as it's returning most of its members, and we're missing some pieces on the blue line from last year, but we'll get into that in a minute. And yeah, I like it.
Yeah, Betsky, as Franco mentioned, Chychrun kind of is one of their key departures here. Matthew Joseph as well, Korpisalo, as we mentioned, and Brandstrom. Their D, I guess, kind of same thing with Montreal, I guess, is one of their areas of concern by all means. So do you think the Chychrun loss how deeply is that going to kind of affect the Senator squad?
That's interesting. I got to watch a lot of Chychrun when he was on the Arizona Coyotes, drafted by them in 2016. I think 16th
Rest in peace.
overall. Yeah, yes. But in a lot of ways, I thought it was really surprising that the Senators were so interested in him leading up to the trade, because they have Sanderson, who's a lefty, they have Chabot, who's a lefty, and they brought in Chychrun, who's a lefty. I mean, I know Chychrun can play on the right side a little bit, but he's still a left shot. So it seemed like it was one of those situations where you had too much of one thing on the defense. And I know Sanderson's a lot more of a two-way, very good defensive defenseman who has some offensive upside. He's a little bit of the yin to Chabot's yang, but you're still getting three guys who kind of need that top power play time, kind of pinching here and there, and kind of putting your partner in tough spots occasionally. And it almost felt like the team understood that, and that's why they were able to be comfortable trading him for, not much.
No.
I had to look it up. I thought Jensen must have been some sort of prospect that I had somehow missed, but it is not that.
Nope. He's a veteran defenseman.
Yep. But
Yeah.
maybe that's what this team needs. And you know, the blue line to me is the part that took the biggest hit. Otherwise, forwards are pretty much the same, if not better. Obviously, huge upgrades on goaltending, and maybe this is what they need. And again, if Sanderson can take the step up and be a top 20 defenseman, top 30 defenseman in the league, this is looking really good because Chychrun is never quite that.
Yeah. Speaking of veteran defensemen, Thomas Chabot has missed at least 14 games in each of the last 4 seasons. He missed 31 last year. Just seems to be bitten by that injury bug. The defensive unit is already kind of the weakest part of this roster. If he goes down, things really start to get interesting there as well. Stützle as well didn't have a great season last year, so it's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back. So, yeah, in terms of kind of, I guess, let's say Chabot goes down and Stützle doesn't have kind of a great season here, Franco, where do you see this team kind of heading? Because they're in an interesting spot where they have a few key pieces on this roster, but it seems like there's a lot dependent on, let's say, kind of injuries going their way or not going their way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Chabot has always been like their one, or, you know, really their number one defenseman until Sanderson has really kind of stepped up and grown the last season and a half or so, right? So now we're banking on him being the top guy and moving Chabot down. That looks a lot better, and I really do hope Sanderson does take that step forward and becomes that solid number one defenseman. You pair him with whoever that helps him, you know, be able to play the game that he can play. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the loss of Chabot, if he does get injured like he has historically, is as big as it has been in the past. So at least that kind of helps. You know, you move him down to the second line. Jensen is a veteran that has played a good defensive role previously with the Caps. So I don't think he's great, but again, he's a veteran presence. So if Chabot misses time, it doesn't hurt this team as bad as it has in the past. Now, obviously, the depth is not that great to fill for him, but I don't think it hurts as much. And then, you know, I think in general the forward depth with the veterans that they've added helps a little bit as well, and maybe that helps Stützle take another step back to where he was a couple of years ago. He was really good 2 years ago.
Yeah, 90 points.
Yeah, so maybe again we see like a in between last year and that year prior. And I think you'd be happy as a Sens fan if that's what you get out of Stützle this year.
Yeah, Betsky, I want to talk Brady Tkachuk. Obviously, his brother Matthew is kind of a similar player in terms of an agitator, but it seems like he knows where the line is a little bit better than his brother. Brady led the team in points last year, but also pretty much was one of the top 5 most penalized people in this league. If the Sens want to kind of continue to move forward, it seems like he is one of the leaders on this team, but he is relatively still kind of young. It seems like he has to mature and kind of not put his team in certain situations, especially when it comes to just taking stupid penalties.
Yeah, agreed. And I wonder how much of that was the frustration of, you know, being ahead and then just letting in bad goals or just not able to get past that hump where it seemed like this was a hyped up team and people were ready for it. And this was a team that felt like they just got the wind knocked out of them over and over because they're playing great. And then a kind of a sloppy goal gets let in. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting. I think you're right that he does have a little bit of development to go. I do think he's one of the most imposing players in the league. I think this is somebody that would pretty much any single team would love to have on their team. And you got to wonder what he would look like if he got moved to like a Vancouver or something like that. But all that said, I mean, I think this is a little bit of the team identity too, is that they're kind of bullies. Those games against Detroit last season were incredible. So circle any of those games. These teams do not like each other. The whole DeBrincat thing with him leaving Ottawa and going to Detroit definitely has carried over. And I believe they injured Larkin in one of those battles between the teams. So those matches have been really fun. And these teams know that there's a wild card spot that's potentially open, and whoever comes out on top, potentially even in the season-long series against each other, is the one who may take it.
Yeah, we got to delete Chris Neal's phone number from Brady Kachuk because it's getting him into too much trouble here. If they're, no more texting Chris Neal by any means. But their first line's interesting to me, right? Because we talked about Stützle's kind of promise. Brady Kachuk has shown that he has the offensive talent. And then you have Claude Giroux, who's also kind of this aging veteran, put up 60-plus points last year. As this team develops, though, it still feels like they kind of, you'd almost want a younger guy up there to kind of develop more chemistry heading forward with this team, Franco. So what are your thoughts on this first line, and kind of Batherson maybe could step up into that spot? So it's interesting in terms of their top six configuration.
Yeah, I think you could probably move Batherson up. And I think historically they have kind of shifted Giroux between the top and second line. The problem is you also have Perron on that second line now. So do you really want to line with Perron, Norris, and Giroux, two, aging players? I think at least Giroux still has a little bit more pep in his step than Perron does comparatively. But yeah, I think you kind of have to keep it as it is, just based on the way the team is built. Now, if you move Pinto up, or if you move him to the wing, or maybe Greg moves up, then it gets a little more interesting. You move Greg up and Perron down. Now you can move Giroux down and Batherson up, and it looks pretty good. So I think there's a lot of different pieces. I do think that we could see a little bit more of a step from Pinto and Greg as well. So that would be huge for this team if those guys can really kind of give you a little bit more than they did last year, and maybe make these two veterans in Giroux and Perron their minutes more expendable, so to speak. Move them down a little bit in the lines. And I still think they have something to give as well. They both were productive, and it'll be fun to bet Perron against his former team, because it seems like he loved going against his former teams, and now add Detroit to the list.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Circle
freakish.
it.
Yes. Circle the Blues, Vegas, and Detroit now for Perron shots props.
Yeah, exactly. Before we get into the best worst case scenario for the Ottawa Senators, I'd like to talk to you about our sponsor, BetterHelp. This episode of Expected Bets 4 is brought to you by BetterHelp. Have you ever stopped to think about something new you'd love to learn? As adults, we don't always make the time to learn we used to when we were kids. Kids are constantly exploring and growing, but somewhere along the way, life gets busy and we lose some of that curiosity. What's something you've been wanting to dive into? Maybe it's cooking, picking up a new language, or even figure out your golf game to finally beat your new friend. Just because we're older doesn't mean we have to stop growing. In fact, therapy can help you reconnect with that sense of wonder. It reminds you that your back-to-school moment can happen at any time. Therapy is not just for people who have gone through something major. It's for anyone looking to be the best version of themselves. Therapy can help you learn positive ways to cope with stress, set healthy boundaries, and tackle challenges with more confidence. It's really about giving yourself the tools to thrive and grow, no matter what stage of life you're in. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Now back to the show. Getting into the Ottawa Senators' best and worst case scenarios. Betsky, I'll start with you. We gave you the worst case for Montreal, and I think it impacted your mindset on this team. So I'm going to reverse it here. The best outlook for the Ottawa Senators is what?
Yeah, I mean, maybe Brady Chuck and Stutzla call better help, and then Stutzla gets his production back up, and Brady takes less bad penalties, and Allmark is the goaltender they need, and they take that playoff spot, that last wild card spot that I think is up for grabs in the East. Don't forget the Washington Capitals made the, the playoffs last season, so somebody's going to leapfrog them, and I think it's one of Buffalo, Detroit, or Ottawa, and I personally like Ottawa's chances the best. I think this is the most dynamic out of the teams with the strongest goaltending. So you kind of are combining what Buffalo has going with a little bit more veteran presence that Detroit has going. And then the one thing that neither team has going for them, which is a goalie. And that's kind of what Ottawa is in my mind. So I have a feeling this is going to be the team that takes that wild card. I'm excited for them this season. I think best case scenario is not only do they get into the wild card spot, but maybe they upset a top team. Maybe it's Toronto versus Ottawa in round one, and Ottawa comes through.
That would be ideal, I'd say.
Pretty,
in terms of a Canadian match.
pretty good.
Could they be the Panthers from a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of
upsetting a top
similarities. It's a tough team. I mean, Norris is a tough player. Tkachuk's obviously a tough player. I think Grieg and Pinto are working their ways into becoming kind of formidable two-way guys. I love the Amadio pickup. Cousins, speaking of a former Panther.
Yeah.
Sanderson has a lot of room to grow, and I think of Tyler Clevin is kind of listed in a lot of lineups. This is a big defenseman who could be a formidable guy to play against. So could be interesting.
Yeah, you wonder if Cousins kind of brings that Florida Panthers mindset over to the Senators along with them.
More bad penalties.
Yeah, why not? It's just a number. Exactly. Franco Betsky mentioned kind of out of Buffalo, Montreal, and Ottawa, the one X factor Ottawa had was their goaltender here. In terms of worst case scenario, it seems like it starts with him if Allmark kind of regresses a little bit from his time in Boston.
Yep, I think that's it right there. If Allmark is not who we think he is, you have a big problem here. And obviously the blue line in front of him right now, the way we're seeing it, does not look like it's going to set him up to be in a great spot. He is going to have to be the guy that saves them, that bails them out in games. And can he do that night in and night out? He didn't have to do as much on the Bruins. The Bruins play a great system. They have a hell of a blue line. This blue line just a little bit weaker. So yeah, I think that is the worst case scenario, that we don't see the improvement in that. We see the same thing we saw last year, and this is a team that just can't get out of their way. Stupid penalties, bad play on the blue line, and just they're not competing, and that I feel like we were all very disappointed with this team the last 2 years.
Yeah.
We came into it with excitement, and now it feels like a little bit we're jaded at this point. But like I said, I want to believe. So let's see what happens. And I'm not that high on Detroit and Buffalo compared to them. At least, like you said, it's goaltending is huge in this league. And if this is the guy, then he's got to be.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting how Allmark handles this increased workload as well, right? Because he's done it in the past on previous teams, with the past 2 seasons with the Bruins. Him and Swayman have pretty much gone 1-1. Last year in the playoffs, he maybe played 1 or 2 games before Swayman took over that number 1 spot. So how many games can Forsberg give you as well, which is going to be another one, because he didn't have necessarily a great season by any means. But again, that defensive unit also significantly struggled, and the support that the offense gave him wasn't really there either. So that's something to also consider this year, because if he can't handle that, let's say 50 games, it could get interesting in Ottawa for sure, given kind of what they're paying him. All right, before we get into some of the team and player futures, I'd like to talk to you about our sponsor, DraftKings. NFL Week 1 is here, and a new season means new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown. The NFL season kicks off on Thursday night with the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Baltimore Ravens. The Chiefs are currently favored by 3, with the total being set at 46.5. If you're looking to place your bet on Week 1 NFL action, head over to DraftKings. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the best place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you just bet $5 and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. Only at DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
All right, let's get into the Ottawa Senators regular season points total, currently listed at 90.5 here. Franco, I'll throw it to you. Interesting line for sure. Awfully tempting. You're high on this team. Is this something you're going to be playing?
I feel like I have to go over because we see Detroit sitting at that same number, right? And I'm not as high on them. So someone's got to get there, right? I think I want to go over here as much as I'm a little bit scared and a little bit jaded from them failing me previously. I think that maybe this is the year that we see the right things happen here for this team.
Yeah, Betsky too. They're plus 125 to make the playoffs. Is that kind of more enticing market than their regular season points for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm skipping the over on the points completely and just going straight for making the playoffs here because you gain plus money here. No team in the past 2 seasons has made the playoffs with less than 90 points. So I'm sorry, less than 91 points. So if you think they're going to be able to go over the point total, just take the playoffs. And I was just thinking about it too. I know I kept on saying that there's one wild card spot taking away from the Islanders, but actually I kind of feel like there's 2 because the Capitals and the Islanders don't look so hot to make the playoffs this year. I know Jersey can kind of take back one of those spots in the Metro, but there's 2 teams that I think can fall out of this. So, and I guess Tampa would be the other one maybe, but regardless, I think if you're going to be rooting for one of those Atlantic teams to make the playoffs, I think Ottawa's got the best shot, and I'm going to take that over the team total anytime.
Yeah, I think the division conference and Stanley Cup markets are kind of out of the consideration in terms of what we're looking at here. Getting into some player point futures, Brady Tkachuk's at over 82.5. Stützle is at 86.5, and Drake Batherson is at 63.5. Betsky, do any of those jump out to you?
Yeah, I love buying the regression on Stützle here. I know 87 points is a bit high. His best season was 90, but I think this entire offense can take another step up. I think with better chemistry, without having to potentially worry about bailing their goaltender out left and right, that there's maybe a little bit more fluid play. That I kind of wish I could get it a little bit lower. So there's definitely some risk involved. I don't mind the Brady one either, to be honest. Again, if Stützle has a better season, I kind of feel like Brady's going to as well. Batherson's the one I'm worried about because I'm not as entirely sure where these lines end up. It felt like last season they mixed it up a ton, where Batherson would be on the top line with Norris and Brady, and then Stützle would be on with Drew and Tarasenko, and then the next day it would be Drew with Tkachuk and Stützle again, and that part concerns me a bit more for Batherson, but I think the 2 big boys are the ones that you kind of want to lean into, if anything, here, and I don't mind either, to be honest.
Yeah, their goal props are also interesting. Tkachuk at 36.5, Stützle at 29.5, and Batherson at 25.5. Franco, are you touching any of the point or goal markets?
I actually kind of like Batherson. 68 points last year, so unless we're thinking he's going to regress, I think if anything, he might have more responsibility with this team, to be honest with you. So I think that number's a tad low.
Yeah, I like it. Green to win the Jack Adams, 8-1 right now, second best. If we do see this team kind of making the playoffs, I think he's certainly a consideration, Betsky.
That's one of my favorite trophies or awards that I've been able to dig up so far. There's always kind of a narrative with Jack Adams. I mean, there's a reason why Paul Maurice hasn't won year over year. To me, you kind of want to see the improvements of the team and bringing them to a spot they haven't been to in a long time. We saw it with Rick Tocchet last season. I kind of like that. I think this is a nice option that I may use to hedge. I bet that we'll be talking way down the road for a goaltender who will be, or a coach who will be coaching a brand new team in this league, which will be my favorite Jack Adams approach. But there's also something, the more I'm looking at this, am I crazy to kind of like them to win the division? I wish the odds were slightly better. And maybe it's one of those things you wait to see if they come out a little slow, but with good goaltending,
I feel like they have to start hot to win the division.
That's true.
This is going to be your best line if you like them to win the division at 11-1, because there's no way they're going to go 5-10 to start the season, and then that's a long way to crawl back already.
That's a good point. But if Florida comes out slow with the age-old Stanley Cup hangover, Boston kind of refiguring out what this looks like with just Swayman and not Allmark, and then Toronto going full Toronto.
Yeah. I think Florida is your biggest worry with that. I can certainly see Toronto faltering and Tampa and Boston, but Florida's going to be a tough one to crack for them to.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's very risky, but
yeah, I do like the green look though. I mean, I think you go from a team that recorded 78 points last year, missed the playoffs, has been a disappointment 2 straight years, and they make the playoffs. This almost feels like the playoff bet, but you're getting 8-1 as opposed to plus 125.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the way to play them in general.
All right, let's get into our closing thoughts for the Ottawa Senators here. Franco, I'll start with you. I think we're pretty high on this team to begin with, given our thoughts on the Jack Adams and their odds to make the playoffs here. But what do you kind of expect for this team this season?
I'm hoping they get good goaltending. Finally, it's been a struggle for a lot of teams in this league, right? This is always the piece that you feel like you have a great forward group or a good blue line, and then you turn around and the goaltender is just awful or whatever the case may be. So this seems to be the patch that this team has been missing for a while, and maybe they can finally return to form here. They have him for a few years. A lot of their good younger players that have some upside are signed long-term. This might be the start of this team finally being a perennial playoff team, and maybe we can have some excitement in Ottawa for once from this team. It'll be nice to see, and I want to see some steps forward from the young guys as well.
Yeah. Betsy, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, ditto. I really think this could be a team that's going to be fun to watch. This is another one kind of like Montreal, where they're a little underappreciated on the book side. So lots of props here that you can kind of take advantage of. Brady shots at home is going to be a huge thing that's going to help you cash all year. Chabot assists, shots is always a good option. Stützle hopefully bounces back and he may get even like multi-point lines occasionally. This is going to be a fun team to watch. They were really fun last year, and don't forget to circle those Detroit games, especially for those Perron shots.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And I think if you are kind of assuming Stützle bounce back, I think you're going to be high on his point props early on in the season. I think that's your best option for sure here. All right. Well, we want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Expected Bets 4, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network. Be sure to check out our socials on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Expected Bets 4. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.